Well, hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this IoD National Sustainability Group's webinar, People, Planet, Profit, Making Sustainability Profitable. And very delighted to see a large number of people have signed up, and hopefully a large number of people are joined us despite what is certainly here in Northampton, exceptionally warm weather. This is the first of a series of webinars we'll be doing, and we will be asking you to participate in some way, both with questions, of course, but also perhaps a little bit of profiling. Sustainability is a big word with a lot of different meanings and understandings for a lot of different people. And that's what we want to try to do, is to perhaps A, understand where everyone is, make this session as useful as possible, B, really try to start this process of making sure that perhaps we demystify it and we all kind of have a shared understanding. That will be one of the objectives of the sustainability group, which I have the great honor and privilege of now chairing. I was on the old IoD Sustainability Task Force along with Donald Muandase and Richard Hagan and others. It became the Sustainability Group, Special Interest Group, sadly, and Donald led that process, did an excellent job in creating a great foundation. Good for him, but sadly for us, his business is taking him in far more travels and far more intense projects at the moment, so he felt he had to step down as chair, but I'm delighted to say that he is still very much involved with the committee. So it falls upon me to be the chair. I was previously his deputy chair. So we're in the process, for those of you that are a part of the IoD and perhaps also signed up to this special interest group, we're in the process of strengthening the committee, and within a couple of weeks, having had the great honor to spend a day at the IoD in Pall Mall a couple of weeks ago, we're going to sort of devise a plan, a campaign, if you will, for what the SIG is going to try to achieve, building on Donald's foundations, and perhaps, a very much a proactive plan for what issues we want to cover in the coming months. And that might be via webinars such as this. It might be through blogs, articles, podcasts, a whole variety of different ways. And that will include, of course, reaching out to all the other branches and special interest groups, because sustainability, I think, is something that everybody should be not only taking notice of, but building into their business so it becomes business as usual. And perhaps as we go through this session, we will begin to understand why we think that's a good thing, despite the fact it sounds a bit scary for some people. It's kind of, I'm not sure how I grasp hold of it. Can I boil the ocean in one go? And where do I begin? And at the moment, I'm fighting to survive. That's true of so many businesses, right? Survival, resilience, fighting to survive, and I don't have time, bandwidth, or perhaps resources, cash resources, to start new projects such as sustainability. On the other hand, you might well be an advanced or experienced practitioner in this space, in which case, obviously, we're very keen to hear from you and your different experiences as we go through the coming months. But today, it's a great pleasure to welcome or introduce to you and welcome to this webinar one of my colleagues on the Special Interest Group's Sustainability Committee, that is Richard Hagan. And it's almost as if we're starting with the end of the journey in many ways, because Richard has been a protagonist, an advocate, and a practitioner of so many of the issues and so many of the opportunities that sustainability in its broadest sense represents. And I think as a great example and inspiration to all of us as to what can be achieved if you do commit wholeheartedly to these issues of this word sustainability. And another thing that I perhaps want to lay very clear at the beginning, I see personally sustainability as there are several elements, and that includes, of course, environmental sustainability. It also includes social sustainability. It definitely includes economic sustainability. And if you're more familiar with the term ESG, environment, social, and governance. Governance is very much the area of the IoD, better directors, how we govern our businesses, of course. And the S is very important too. Climate change, net zero, absolutely understand very much the focus on it, but let's not forget the social elements, and that comes down to your staff, your employees, your people, also community and society as well. So we will try through the SIG to represent all these different elements and dimensions of sustainability, as I say, to try to build towards a shared common understanding, perhaps a framework, a strategic framework to look at these things and to be able to build them wherever you are on the journey. 1 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10. It's a continuous improvement approach that we need, and you can always get better, do a little bit more, but still for a cost benefit to the business, that it is not, going to drag you into cost and time that is not fruitful, of course. Okay, that sort of introduction said, let me just firstly just tell you, I guess, what I do for a day job. So I'm an associate professor at the University of Northampton, and I do a lot of work. Well, I teach strategy, international business, but I'm very much a strategist. Strategy and society is the sort of space that I'm very interested in. So half of my classes are the tools and techniques of strategy. The other half is perhaps the philosophy of strategy, responding to societal needs, making sure you're understanding those pressures from government, employees, customers, press, NGOs, etc. That we're in this together. Are we taking a stakeholder view as against perhaps a narrow shareholder view? And I do that, ladies and gentlemen, from the perspective of you can make your business better if you address sustainability from a stakeholder perspective. So you can make your business in the medium to long run better for your shareholders if you do address and are concerned about the wider stakeholders. So enough, I think, from me. Let's just perhaps introduce today's star, Richard Hagan, and he's a star in many ways, and his business is a great star in many ways. And you'll get an undoubted feel for his passion and commitment, and he has so much to say. So what we'll try and do is make sure that some key messages come through. But Richard has been on a journey for some time, and what we're going to do with Richard's blessing, we'll follow a sort of a little bit of a framework just to give you a flavor of where we're going to try to go with this. And this is a framework that I use and devise with a lot of the businesses that I'm involved with, both my own. I have a little side hustle, of course, so I'm also an NED in a couple of businesses as well. But this would be, for me, a framework that I use, a 7M framework. Perhaps I should put a little copyright in there somewhere. But we're going to talk to Richard through some of these steps. Colleagues, and very great thanks to colleagues from the IoD, Heather and Francis are monitoring the chat box. So if you've got any comments, please, or questions, please put them in the chat box, and we'll try and pick them up and have a pause for breath every so often. And obviously a Q&A at the end. But really, I'd just like to, again, welcome you all, but also welcome Richard Hagan. Richard, good to have you with us. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. You're in the hot seat. It's not going to be like Mastermind or anything like that. But I've heard you speak so many times with such passion and eloquence. So I guess, should we start at the beginning? When did your personal sustainability journey start, and why?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, everybody, for being online today. Mine is a bit more dramatic than everybody else's when they sort of say, the governments and the councils have claimed climate emergency. They haven't. They've just said the words. Crystal Doors, we got planning permission declined in 2015 for a biomass burner. It was closed my factory down within 28 days. Obviously, I appealed 4 years later to get through planning. And that was the crisis in my life, to sort of say, well, how much am I damaging the environment? There's no smoke coming out. But from the environmental point of view, they were asking me questions I could not answer. And that's where I had to then sort of learn the technical side. And that's where most people get frightened. But for me, as 3 A levels at science degree in food manufacturing, it was the science side that I enjoyed. And at long last, I then had something to be able to champion. So my motive is not the same as most companies. Most motives is obviously to make more profits. And that is the possibility that I'll be able to prove as we go through today.
Great. Thank you, Richard. Now, do you agree with me that this is not just about environmental sustainability? It is broader and wider, and we should take into account the social elements and the economic elements?
The definition of sustainability is to leave in the same or better place than you found. So your bank balance the year later should be better. Your assets should be better or the same. And obviously, we know that businesses fail when the cash flow disappears. What we've got to see is how we improve the skills of our employees, how we improve the community for which we're going to be getting our next employees from, So are we engaged with the community, such as the education, the colleges, the universities? Are we with our governance, improving our health and safety and our different sorts of systems like cybersecurity? Obviously, that's a big call today, is we have to have that continuous improvement. And people, to do with quality, is sort of like, you know, zero defects. It's been around for a long, long time. But this mapping of sustainability is better than quality and health and safety. It really is the biggest umbrella, which allows you to bring in the whole lot of what Adrian said, which is environmental, social, and governance. It is the corporate social responsibility. It is the better business. It is the force for good, which is what businesses can be. We are the ones with the most money. We're the ones who can then be the guardians for our employees and for the better community.
Okay. Now, when you started then, so you've explained the motive and the business issues that you were addressing. You have a scientific background. What was the sort of first step? I mean, I put there an M for mapping, and what I really mean is a gap analysis, I guess, because, you know, if I want to get to Glasgow and ask you for directions, it's probably a good idea to know where I'm starting from. Am I starting from Birmingham or Manchester, right? So how did you sort of do that? Where am I now? And just get a sense of you know, how big the mountain of the task was.
So in 2015, times were very, very difficult. Now we have a lot of resources. So for me, it will be go to the SME Climate Hub, which is the government one, and they will do the baseline assessment. They do a free carbon footprint reporting. I, at the time in the Northwest, is the growth company, is they did what they called energy and efficiency resource planning. And they gave me 26 points, which is exactly the mapping. Is you have your short-term goals, which was for us as a manufacturer, it was like, you've got compressed air leaks, turn them off, that's it. You'll save a lot more money. And then there's the longer-term ones, such as the installing of the solar panels, the changing of our compressors from vanes to, from the different types of compressors that there are, and then the vacuum pumps to change those. Those are big investments of sort of like 20 or 100,000 pounds plus. And then obviously the dust extractor that I brought in afterwards, 500,000. So you've got to be able to know where you are, which is what you said, Adrian. You know, are you starting from Cornwall? Some people will be. They need to have a baseline assessment, and that is now easily done through what's called scope 1, 2, and 3. And that's to know your personal carbon footprint and your business carbon footprint. And what the slide that's come up now is it's the pension funds that started off during sort of like the lockdown with the oil and the gas, and they were sort of saying certain companies are going to disappear in the next 5 years as companies are adapting and what we require. Now we have the new government in power. 2030, it really will happen. By 2030, we will be 90% plus on renewable with land, wind, and we'll have a lot more solar on the land as well. For us, as Adrian says, the technical side is this is TCFD, is Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. We've got ESOS, which is for the big companies, sort of like the 100 million, is they have to report, and they have done since like 2018, but then they've reported and done nothing about it. They've not improved. And that's when it then came in that we had to have a scientific, as opposed to going 2030, 2038, 2050, we'll be net zero, and we'll do it 2 days before. Now, with the scientific is, if you set your baseline, you've got to then start reducing each year, and therefore you're proving that you are taking action immediately rather than kicking the can down the road. Carbon neutral has had to be removed because the carbon neutral was, well, we'll just pay $1 a ton and offset everything. And even for the big companies, our companies is 386 for scope 1, 2, and then got to about 700 for scope 3. That would have been $700, and I could have claimed carbon neutral, and that's just wrong. So now it's net zero, which is for scope 1 and 2. It's 95% reduction before you offset, which means they want to see real reductions. And this is where the game change has been: is the real reductions is a reduction in your costs long term, and certain costs can be short term for things like LEDs and solar panels. Is the paybacks are now coming faster and faster and faster, which is why now is the time to start thinking about it. Obviously, for me, it was a radical disruption. And what we're trying to do today is there is too much to learn, is we're going to be going through the right steps in the right order.
Thank you. Let's just go back to this, this motive element. So one thing is you voluntarily did it. what I think, and you've mentioned there a couple of the frameworks that, across the world, in Europe, in the UK, everything that I've done and studied in the last few years, it's a tsunami going to hit business. So what is currently voluntary will actually very soon become obligatory. So you must do it because the law will insist. And going to the last M there, monitoring, within 5 years, and we see it in Europe already, even small and medium-sized businesses will have to report on their positive impacts separately to their negative impacts. There'll be no setting off. There'll be no planting a few trees. That, as Richard suggests, is just not good enough. So, any motive to do this, if you're not sure and you're putting it off, I really would urge you to try to be one step ahead of compliance, act beyond compliance. And if you're supplying larger businesses, you can bet your bottom dollar that those larger businesses are going to start filtering their suppliers along these sort of issues. And that can be central government, local government procurement, where there's the Social Value Act, and that is, you have to demonstrate social value in any bid or tender. That is spreading into the private sector. So the supply chain will increasingly, my part in if I supply Jaguar Land Rover or whatever, Jaguar Land Rover are under pressure to do the right thing. They will expect me as one of their suppliers to do the right thing as well. So Richard, have you seen, were you a leader, or were there some of your clients, perhaps larger clients, were they insisting on this? What's been happening the last few years? Has the dial moved? Just give us a bit of a flavor from a supply chain perspective.
The dial since 2015 has moved a huge amount. Is we buy board from a large company, Kronospan. They had no declaration in 2015. They do now. They have what's called the life cycle assessment. They have their embedded carbon. So those are the technical words, and we have those data forms now. We buy from Henkel. Once again, they have a website now with how they're working because they're global. So from Europe, you have CBAM, which is the cross-border adjustment mechanism. The UK is releasing that as soon as possible. Unfortunately, we're having to also fight with America, which has the Inflation Reduction Act. So two continents, humongous in the sense that if you try to export to them, or if you have a business that's connected to them, they're going to now sort of say, we have to have it, and that starts from next year. And the UK will be starting the year afterwards. So already we know by 2026, it's going to be the sharp end of the tail. And that's why we wanted to say people need to start moving quickly now, because the carrots are still out there, and before long, it's going to be the stick that comes along.
Mm.
Where Crystal Doors is we didn't supply any of the big companies, and then when we started supplying the big companies, we have to have the FSC, which is the forest one. But because we've now got things like the B Corp, and we've got the King's Award, we've got other awards, it's very much about that supply chain, having credentials, having awareness. And for me, that is everybody in the different businesses, like I said, SME, manufacturer, that's where I fit. Big manufacturers are being given the most burden because we are the biggest emitters. The service industry is now realizing it's a bit like cloud computing is taking up a lot more energy than they expected, and obviously it's growing so rapidly. Is everybody is going to have to be on board with that level of awareness of knowing what it is your company and your team can actually achieve. And the first one is, as we've said at the beginning, is the baseline, but the most important is that top level pledge, which is the number 2 on the slide. And this is about authenticity rather than just the lip service of the owners and the board sort of saying, we want to get to net zero because the marketing department said that's where the new business is coming from. If they're not authentic, you can't get then the grassroots of every employee to be on board. And that's where, Adrian, you do the strategy. It's understanding the business culture, and it's understanding how other people should be taken on board the small steps. And that's the one that resonates to me is people hope, as in the bottom left-hand picture, 246 kilowatts sitting on the roof. Yes, it makes me £80,000 a year. Yes, it was paid back in 3.5, 4 years. There you can see the biomass burner, and then the far corner, the big cylinder, that's where we hold it. And then next to it, you can see the humongous box. And that makes sure that that's Industry 4.0. It's the technical one to be able to sort of say that we've got the dust is cleaned and sent back into the factory, and there's no dust going out. Once you share with all your stakeholders what your vision is, what your map is, that's where you have the traction, because other people then go, okay, They're talking about it. We're okay to talk about it. It's one of those conversations that nobody wants to start the conversation, but you start to realize how many amazing people are out there, and sharing best practice is what it's about to be able to move quickly. Normally, as the company, I've seen so often with big companies, the chief sustainable officer becomes the health and safety or the quality because they have the paperwork. The chief sustainable officer should be the person who's the most passionate. They should be the one who's inspiring other people, involving other people. And we do need all the different departments to do with pulling it together to make it one single strand of efforts going through.
We'll come on to the management in a second. I just wanted to pause really for you to tell us a little bit about Crystal Doors, when it's founded, etc. And yes, I think it's important to highlight there some of the accolades or accreditations that Richard and Crystal Doors have achieved. Now, it's very interesting because I do a lot of work with B Corp. I'm one of their B leaders. I'm also quite heavily involved in the Employee Ownership Association, and it's rare to find somebody who has got very much the same sort of hinterland or interest. And now, if I sort of do it from a slightly more academic perspective. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not your typical academic. I'm very much a commercial academic and later entrant into academia. But it's fantastic that Richard's business is not only B Corp, it's also employee owned. So yeah, just give us tell us a little bit about Crystal Doors, what it does, its main clients, and how long it's been going, etc., etc.
So 1994 is when I started Crystal Doors. 2010, we moved to the premises that you can see on the picture and purchased the property. 2015 was the crisis. 2020 is IEMA, the one in the centre with the pink saying winner, is we beat the Bank of England. This was during lockdown. And I sort of said, yeah, I've put the application in. Thanks for being a finalist amongst 10 others. And it was like all the big companies. I wasn't at the time a member of IEMA. And they said you should be on. And I was like, okay, I'll be on. And then they started describing Crystal Doors. And it was like, how did I win? I beat the Bank of England. And it's ridiculous to be able to sort of see. And this is where the SMEs are able to take a very fast run and change dramatically, where the big companies have obviously got so many sites, so many employees to engage with, so many different products. Is Crystal Doors has one site. That property is EPC rated as A+. So it's the changes can be, when you're small, very, very rapid. When you're larger, it's hard. But we did manage to get with Business Green as manufacturer of the UK. We won that one. EDIT was probably the best one, straight after COP. NatWest was sitting there in the top 10. 650 people on the table, and then my name was called out, and it's like, how? And it was like, no, Richard, you are green all the way through. And that's why I'm saying about the business owners and the business leaders and the business board have to be authentic. That's the only way that you can have that cultural change. The manufacturer, they're the ones who started me off. They said, you put in a great application, but when we came to see your property, you had no signage, you had no display, you weren't talking to others. It was that's just what I was doing. And that's the other side, is that engagement with other people to share with every stakeholder that you have. With the chamber, with Make UK, with the Institute of Directors, I'm a finalist. We'll find out this October. So to me, that was my baseline assessments, is going for the awards to find out where I was. However, B Corp and the impact is free. So the B impact is definitely the best place to be. And it breaks it down into 5 different sections. It does have the government, it has the environment, but on the social, it has workers, community, and your customers, to understand how you've got those feedback loops to how you make the improvements.
Wonderful. Okay, well, it's a hell of a story. And of course, the top right or middle right there, the Queen's Award for Enterprise for Sustainability. And from what I know of that, I do a lot of work in our county. Northamptonshire is underrepresented in that space, so we're trying very hard. But that's quite a rigorous process, isn't it, to get the Queen's Award, Richard? So for me, that is one of the most significant, achievements, I think, on that list. I mean, they're all magnificent, but that one they don't give it away easily, no?
There's only, out of the 4 different ones, you've got export, so obviously it's 100 grand plus. You've got innovation, which is both for service as well as manufactured stuff. The other one is then community, as in social involvement. And then the final one is what Crystal Doors has, which is sustainability. I think this year there was 16. The year that I got it, I think there was 16. Out of all of them, there's only 286 awards this year. And out of that, only 149 new companies. And for me, is where we are now with the new government, is our relationship with America is much stronger than people realize. And with Europe, we need to be able to champion. And one of the demands of, obviously, the King's Award is, are you up to date with HMRC? Hopefully everybody is, with the institute directors. And the other one, more importantly, is an independent account is then checked, because you have 5 years of license to be able to use that logo. And obviously it's got the King's crown on top. And that makes a massive difference for the reputation of any company. And to give you an example, is my assets worth about 1, 2 at the absolute max. Soon afterwards, I was offered 5 million straight away. That proves that the big companies want to have that badge and can't receive it because they can't get to the standards. The standard for the King's Award now is not that 1,000 people apply and they only give away 10. It's a standard. If 1,000 people applied and 1,000 people reached that standard, they would happily give away 1,000 King's Awards. And that, I think, is the misunderstanding, because they think it's an award. It's not an application for, it's competitive. It's only competitive in the sense that that is a standard. And that's why you said, Adrian, it's a very difficult standard to get, because they're looking for evidence. And they want to see it for 3 to 5 years, knowing full well with your accounts and how you've written it, that the next 3 to 5 years, you're on the same climb. So you're taking off like a rocket rather than a boat. They're looking for vertical takeoff, that everything's going very, very well.
Okay. So before we just have a look at a couple of questions and comments. So when did you convert your business to be employee ownership? And has that made any difference in the appetite or approach to sustainability?
It's changed it dramatically. At the beginning, it was about, so November 2023 is when I signed the documents, 27 documents all the way down a long table. The newer year before, they didn't believe it. It was, I'm going to be giving you the company. You only pay me out of the profits. If you're not successful, it's me who's going to suffer, because I'll have to pay a huge amount of tax back, because it's tax-free for how much you sell for. But it has to be paid out of the profits. It's not management buyout. It is not venture capitalists. It's your own company's assets and wealth that's it's come out of. The date was signed, changed over. It was about March or February this year that the penny dropped and started to realize, wow, this is our company. We can make profits and we take home the profits. And the answer is yes. So within the layers, the trust is at the top, and Crystal Doors is the trading company. Then we have the holding company, and then we have the trust. But their attitude has changed dramatically, because they started to realize that they're not working for somebody else who's taking all the profits. They're working for themselves, and any losses they started to realize is part of their losses. And this is where you do get a big change. And for a lot of small companies, once again, if you're not profitable, if you haven't got your accounts set in the right way, the employees' own trust is not an easy way to just walk away. Once again, it has to be signed off by HMRC to prove that, one, you can pay for it within 7 years. You must obviously sign to say you're going to survive more than 2 years. And the value is based on what you put forward as the value. So I tried to sell Crystal Doors and not successful, because it's not an overrun market, but it's certainly got enough players out there. Is people had sort of said, well, second-hand machine, well, picking up your books, not worth it. To be able to sell it to employees, I got several times more than what I would have done on the open market. And therefore, it is worth looking at. And like you say, Adrian, is you understand the employees' own trust. It's giving back the responsibilities and the authority. And that's where they're the ones who are making the money. They're the ones who deserve it. It does change a huge amount of the culture and the way that they obviously come to work. It's not, I'll jump jobs for another £1. It's the long term. And that's, I think, where we need the stability. And that's what I call sustainability, is to have that long-term plan.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. I mean, we're not here to bang the drum for employee ownership today. I think it could be a session that we might do in the course of the next year or two, because it's an extreme at the end of the spectrum of employee voice and employee engagement. But whether or not you're employee owned, I think when we come on to how do we do this, how do we manage this, we do need the passion across the organization. We do need bottom-up communication, bottom-up contribution to everything sustainable. So that's an interesting side. We will come back to that in the coming months. Just looking at the comments and questions there. Now, what is interesting, we've got some very technical questions. I did say to Richard, I don't want to get into politics. I want this to be focused on Richard and what he did to make his business. You know, this session is making sustainability profitable. It could be making sense of sustainability, but it's making sustainability profitable. So a couple of the questions, and Stephen and Gina, thank you very much for them. So we'll just air them, but in what I'm looking at is probe what Richard did to get to these wonderful accolades, really. But anyway, the first question, even with an effective majority, does the government have the resource and power to push through the upgrade of the national grid? Because at present, that upgrade is not expected to be complete before 2035. I don't know if you've got a comment on that, Richard, or not, but as I say, I'd rather focus on the micro element here, not the macro element, what your business did to be so successful and to really embrace sustainability. But any quick comment on the national grid issue?
It will happen. I've been on quite a few of the meetings. This is through Make UK. This is through the Chamber. This is through the Made Smarter. Is another roles that I have. Boy, is it coming through. It's coming through at some speed. That's the reason why the announcements was literally, you could tell they'd hardly sat in the office, and obviously it's government, the real government, that's picked it up and it's running. We've got Great British Rail. That is a dramatic change. 2027, they're going to promise that we're going to have an electric train from Rochdale all the way down to London. It will also then be going to Liverpool. I won't say figures because it is Chatham House. There's billions, tens and tens of billions that are coming through. There's part of it from the government, part of it is coming through with the infrastructure bank, and there's different ways that the government's getting it through. Yes, it's going to happen.
Okay, so at a point of inflection, lots of changes. Gina's question, which sustainability streams would you specifically define for the UK IT integrators? I'm not even sure I know what that means, so excuse my ignorance. But anyway, in addition to iCloud solutions when moving from physical data centers, etc. So I think the point here is around, obviously, the cloud and massive absorbers of energy, of course. But Richard, again, any quick comment on that?
This is the electricity. The UK is still reliant on other sources, and that's the reason, obviously, we've got the nuclear and the oil issues and the gas issues. You'll see that the gas on the wholesale prices are getting crazy money at 5 o'clock, and then they don't bother. And then there's zero money for the wind farms at night time when they've got excess. They've even had to turn them off and pay £14 million for doing that 1 year. Where we're going to be by 2030, 2035 is that we're going to have an abundance. And it was in one of the consultation papers that closed down very quickly. Is they only had 2 weeks open. Is we're going to have a variable rate, I do believe, and that is going to then cause a huge amount of adaptation and changes for companies. And the computers themselves are going to have to work out how to switch to battery when it's expensive, and how to then feed and run processes much faster. I'd even guess that we're going to get nighttime. There's going to be a lot of backup storage processing done by the big computers at night time when there is the excess, and then the edge computing, which is obviously when you've got it on your own site, you'll then have to pay the local fees. So that, to me, is the sustainability stream is mainly going to be on the electrical side of the energy paying for the computers.
Okay. Yep. Sorry.
That's it, really. Yeah.
All right, a nice easy one. Then I will come back to the to John's comment about standards here. This is not we will cover it in the 7Ms. We can come on to that. But do you advertise yourself as a worker co-op? Would you describe yourself as a worker co-op? Do you advertise the employee ownership? Do you use that in your selling documentation?
We do now. I used to be the managing director. I now call myself the chair. Don't want to say chairwoman, chairman. I just say I'm the chair. I'm now a mentor for them. And I think that is the change that people are sort of going, well, you've sold your company, you must have left. And it's the opposite. I've sold my company as now I'm the guardian to look after them, to make sure that, one, they pay me, and the other one is to make sure that they can look after themselves and take on those more responsible roles with a lot more money, because the profit's for them. So from my point of view, it's worth advertising, because when people buy from you, I don't need to name names, but you can see that certain individuals have made billions, or certainly stupid amounts of money, and I can't justify that. I'm one of the many cogs in our business, And for me, it has been about champion the EOT and to be able to say, now we do work like a co-op, as in we're all equal at the same level.
Excellent. So that people side, again, in my introduction, I talked about the S, the social sustainability. You know, there's a whole big space here which isn't getting as much airing as net zero and climate change. But I think we have to look at all of those in the round if we're going to have a strategic approach to sustainability. Yadu Singh is saying scenario here, which really comes down to international competition. Then if we are ahead or behind other countries, but let's say we're ahead and we care about sustainability, which has a short-term cost that drives our prices up, but competitors from the US, you know, don't have that. I mean, when you're talking to such sort of manufacturers or customers, you know, do you anticipate that issue, right? I won't be the cheapest, but you know, you will have all these other benefits from working with me.
You've got to have a level playing field to be able to compete in obviously capitalism. Crystal Doors struggled at the beginning because of that, because obviously there was issues with Northern Ireland and the UK. Where we are now, that is the exact reason why BYD is not selling electric cars into the UK and into Europe. Is the disparity is they're going to just wipe out the market, and that's the reason for the cross-border carbon adjustment mechanism, and that's the reason for the Inflation Reduction Act, is to prevent companies from different countries saying that we don't have the same standards of wages, we don't have the same standards of health and safety, we don't have the same standards of governance, we don't have the same so therefore we can sell the product to you at a ridiculously low price compared to where you're wanting to buy. If we're competing with the UK, it becomes obvious that we've got certain customers who just want price, and we won't be able to sell to them as Crystal Doors. We're selling to obviously people who want to buy into more than just that, and it's not that we've got a brand that's well advertised and they want it for the sake of just wanting it. It's they're buying into it because they know the value of it, and that is difficult to be able to sell. It's a hard marketing one that takes quite some time. But for me, is we're now in a new era which is coming through very, very quickly, where the Chinese themselves, I had one of the high up people from TCL, massive company, 20 billion, and they're making the TV screens and telephones and other bits and pieces. And that was the question. It's a paradox. How do you manage to sell it and have sustainability at the same time? And the answer for them was, it's come 2030, we'll have gone past the tipping point that at the moment, China's still growing too quickly, hence to take it on still more coal. Past 2030, it's likely that they'll have enough solar and wind that they will be then closing down the coal power stations. They know it's the cheapest energy by far. They're going to then be able to compete even better, which means the Americans need to now catch up, and so the Europeans and the UK, that we do need solar and wind, and then have that dramatic understanding of there's none, there's all. And that's the hard one that we've started to understand, that the batteries are now starting to come through, and there's different ways of now having that adaptation of managing even when we live in this world of uncertainty, and that's where we are.
Fabulous. Okay, let's move on then. Under the M's, we've kind of talked about motive, mapping, the gap analysis, the materiality. Let's just quickly, before we address Michelle's question, the means here, but materiality, this concept of double materiality. Now, a lot of jargon and highfalutin names, and, you know, for most people that are fighting to survive, what the hell are you talking about, Adrian? That sounds too academic. But this double materiality, it's your impacts outside your business and the impacts, of course, inside your business. So, Richard, any comment you'd like to make about materiality and this double materiality? We're talking about priorities, but we're talking about, you know, what we're doing to the world, and of course, what the world or what my business is doing to me in terms of water, energy, waste. Yeah.
Yeah, so the easy example is Crystal Doors. We manufacture the vinyl wrap doors for kitchens, bedrooms, and bathrooms. So that's the little cupboard doors that you open. So we'll buy direct from the manufacturers a trailer of board. So let's just say that there's one board and the 2 sheets will be 10 square meters. If we put 30% in the bin, we then put 30%, that's because of quality issues, we then burn 30% and we only actually send out 30%. That's where the double materiality really comes into its own. To be able to say, how efficient are you at being able to have something coming in and what use of it, and then what is actually being sent off. So therefore, you are responsible as a person who's then sort of the custodian as it comes into your factory to what goes out. And that's where double materiality to me is so important, because it focuses on quality, it focuses on resources. That is a great way to start if you're in the manufacturing side of what double materiality is. If you're in the servicing side, it's almost the same. You buy a computer and you use it for a week and you think, oh, the new one's come out, I'll put that one aside and I will buy another computer. And then a new phone comes out and you buy another. And that's where the double materiality is. How long should the phone last and how long should the computer last? 3 to 5 years. To me, that's not going to be the next one coming through. Is we're going to have not necessarily the carbon tax that they've tried to come through, but there will be, as we've got with our government, there is definitely going to be the capital gains tax coming through. But it is, how much consumption are you wasting? That you buy it and waste it and don't think anything of it. And I think then responsibility is going to come through.
No, excellent, Richard. I love the example there that you've used and anchored it in crystal doors. This materiality is it sounds confusing. It isn't if you break it down. But what we're looking for are the things that it's worth addressing, right? Nobody can do everything, and the cost benefit analysis of following every one of these dimensions. What are the biggest impacts that you make? What are the biggest impacts on your business? And of course, as Richard has said, water, waste, energy are in your P&L account. And my personal view is if you're not looking after those already, you are losing efficiencies. You're not good housekeeping. So that's a whole area. And again, we'll probably have a deep dive in that coming forward. Now, Michelle is our Deputy Vice Chair on the committee. Michelle, welcome indeed. I can't see who's on the call to know, but we have two other members. So Richard, myself, Michelle Augusti, we have Kirsty Maxey and Donald Mavundase are on the committee at the moment. We will be looking and going through a process perhaps to strengthen that committee, bringing in specialist skills. And John, I will come back to your point in a minute, but means and management. So Michelle's asking, what are the first practical steps SMEs can do to make ESG sustainability a priority? So I think here, we can play with both the means and the management. You've mentioned the impact, the B Corp impact assessment, which is, ladies and gentlemen, a free tool, and it's a really good comprehensive framework. And it starts with some gateway questions that, your type of business. Are you a long-established chemical manufacturer, or are you a small, relatively new services business? Once you identify or give it your profile, it opens up to 200 questions, which take you in relevant questions, material questions for your area. But there are, as John has alluded to, lots of different standards, ISO standards that could be brought to bear here. Does it link to, Richard, does it link to quality management systems, ISO 9000 that everybody knows about? So I think there's the means. How did you operationalize the strategic decision you made to go full on for sustainability? Question one. Second part to that is, well, the management of it. If you're the passionate advocate, how much time and energy did it take to get your next layer of management on board with you? Did they have to go through training? Did you have to take them out into a Welsh mountain to do some team building and get, so means and management. What experience, if I were working with Crystal Doors, what would I be saying now, Richard?
If you talk to my employees at the beginning of 2015, I used to have the fancy cars, Jaguar, BMW, the rest of it. I bought a Nissan Leaf 2. When it just came out, and they were like, what have you bought a shopping trolley for? What have you bought this electric car for? Because in 2017 is when I bought it. It was unheard of. And I think it was that level of authenticity that the owner is on a mission. And I was slowly drip feeding them. Look what wins we've got with the first phase of solar panel. Look what wins we've got with the new compressor. Look what wins we've got. And then they started coming to me with their small wins of saying, oh, we've just realized if we do this, we've saved money. And it's not about one big thing. It's about championing the lots and lots of little things. And the mapping, what Adrian sort of said, and that's where it's based on your means. There's no way I could have invested X amount of money into all the solar panels or the dust extractor and the biomass burner at the same time. And it is about putting it into a logical understanding that the quick wins save you the money, and that allows you to then have the funding to be able to go forward. So Crystal Doors, one of the things that we've outstripped everybody is we're just under 3 million in turnover, yet I've now spent 3.2 million in investment. And obviously that's the reason why I do like the R&D tax credits, and I do like the investments, the 100% relief. So Crystal Doors is profitable, but the tax, the 25% that it's now gone up to, that is the reason why they put it up to 25%, is to try and get the SMEs to sort of say, you need to be investing soon, because it's going to be a radical disruption if you just keep on waiting and waiting and waiting. And for the means is, if you're a one-man band or you're 5 or 10, it's all to do with the word proportion, and it's got to be realistic. And that's the other side. Is some people, when they say 2050 we're going to be net zero, and I've seen a lot of large companies do this, and then you see that they're just riding it out. Now the government over the next 5 years is going to be doing the majority of the tens, almost coming towards the hundreds of billions of investment, to make sure that the UK is still going to be competitive globally.
So I'm taking from that, you led by example, and gradually people saw that you were serious about it as the leader of the organization. By means, and I think that's a great reference to the resources needed, but what about the methodology? Did you know, was it the B Corp impact assessment model that was the framework you used, or did you look at ISO 26000, or, you know, how did you sort of go from, all right, we're going to do it, and it's going to mean you got to change the way you work, guys, and it's going to cut across the departments within the business. It's not, you know, it's not HR's job to do this, or it's not marketing, it's not production, it's everybody. How did you sort of, best word I can think of, operationalize it?
So this is how slow it is. 2015, we had the drama. 2019, first award. 2020, I was picking up the awards. 2023, we got the B Corp in April. 2 years before, we'd actually put it in. And that was 2021, which is when they started to realize everybody's on board. And when we started the B Corp, because it included the workers, it was involving them. That is the big word. You know, it's been said by Benjamin Franklin. If you tell somebody, I'll forget. You know, if you teach somebody, I might remember. If you involve them, I will learn. And it was them being empowered, which is why I then switched over to the IoT. As soon as the employees are empowered, you've got everybody, and it's a bit like a rowing boat. There's so many companies I see now, and even for Crystal Doors at the beginning, is we're rowing in different directions. Is we all had, and this is where you've got to have that single vision that people actually believe in, and that's what is that belief. As soon as my employees had belief that Richard had done it on his own, and now Richard has given us the opportunity to do our bit, that's when we saw the dramatic changes.
Fantastic. Wow, that's a very powerful statement and testimony there. And how did you measure success then? Obviously, people coming with small wins, and we've saved so much, and we've done this, that, and the other. Was there any other framework that you used? Because one of the things that I do at a lot of the university, we have a particular algorithm that can measure impacts against each of the UN SDGs and also monetize them. So turn it into pound, shillings, and pence. And what's that old saying? If you can measure it, you can manage it. Businesses are used to numbers. What's the return on investment? If I put £1 in and I don't know how much to get back, that's a challenge. If I put £1 in, I know I'm going to save 3 or 4. Were there any particular set of metrics that you used, Richard? I mean, not only for carbon and carbon measurement, but across the piece here.
I was brave enough that we started off with carbon, scope 1 and 2. That was quite easy to measure. Once we hit scope 3, I attempted to do all 15 sections. And obviously, a lot of them don't relate to us. Like, you know, the banking, we don't have any money hardly. And to do with franchises, we don't have any franchises. But when we came to people like work travel, we now have a policy in place that we don't employ people beyond 3 miles, and that we will try and upskill anybody within that. And there's those metrics that when you start looking outside the box and saying what's relevant to us. So it is related to money, but it's what is relevant to us. And relevant to us was, for me, is why should Crystal Doors, when Greater Manchester, that part of it, is so difficult in the traffic? We had somebody working from Bolton. It was taking them over an hour to get to work. So that's an hour, 40 minutes every day to try and get to work and back. Let's change it to sort of say, can we get the quality of people within our area? That seems like off the record and it's not really recorded, but those are the real quick wins and game changers for businesses to sort of think outside the box. And so what is it going to be that's impactful for us? And that's it, Adrian, exactly where you came from, is you look for cost of our wood is probably the highest, and then foil, and it was a game, and that's what it has to be, is a game worth playing. My employees had daily monitoring, weekly monitoring, monthly, and obviously for the actual carbon is only once a year. So when we did the carbon reporting, we knew we were knocking down tons every single year. But on the daily basis, it's they'd all of a sudden go, I've thought of a new way. I just got one the other day. We're switching from 3mm MDF to 2.5. It's gone from £10.46 to £7.50. Whoa! Celebration. And we use hundreds of sheets a week. It's those quick wins that everybody now is celebrating to say, I found a way round to adapt.
Yeah, no, that's tremendous. And I think what I'm sorry, go on, carry on.
We had the top line as the financial, as just like, you know, the leadership management. We had the top line. These are the important ones for us. So when somebody comes and sort of says, "Oh well, if we take on the cloths and wash them and bring them back again," it was like, "Whoa, we're talking pennies here." Great idea. Do not put anybody down. Great idea. We'll be thinking about it. We'll record it, and we'll try and do the figures. And it just didn't add up. However, somebody who's dealing with the board, where it's sort of, you know, the 20,000 to 50,000 a month, and we could be saving 10%, it was worth then keep on going backwards and forwards. Same with the quality. I can't believe I tried for 20 odd years to improve quality through the quality systems. And as soon as it became an environmental issue of playing a different game, it then started having the traction. It's the conversation that you have. But first, financials, know what you're going to save. What are the big costs? And every company is different. The big cost could be your diesel. Look at the vehicles.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, this is really hitting that point, making sustainability profitable. It's not do it over there on a Thursday if I've got nothing else to do. It should become business as usual, integrated into your business. Okay, so we've done all these things. Stephen has made a point effectively around life cycle accounting, you know, the historic cost accounting looking backwards. I think that's not good enough. We have to start looking at the life cycle. We're going to have end of life legislation coming through. The circular economy, again, that's a topic we will look at in depth in the future. Monitoring. Now, you have already talked about some of the accolades you've got, because, you know, there are many companies out there. Well, I give a check to charity, or Maureen on reception wants me to pay for her son's under 15 football team's shirts. You know, a lot of people are quietly doing something for the community, the old-fashioned philanthropy, or excuse me, or corporate social responsibility, I guess. And you know, many think that's enough, and it's very good because that is community spirited. I've been associated with Scott Barter. It's a very big Quaker company. You know, a lot of the Quaker companies want to hide their light under a bushel. I don't want to put myself on a pedestal. I don't tell the world how great I am, because, you know, A, I'll get shot at, and B, you know, something might happen. But this monitoring, I don't think there'll be much choice in the future. We will have to report on these things. And you'll have to report with evidence, and you'll have to report with conviction. And, you know, if we're moving from sort of I don't believe in it, I ignore it, or I greenwash, you know, put my annual report and accounts out there with a picture of lots of trees and perhaps children from all over the world hugging the trees, you know, that's not good enough. So the monitoring here, which frameworks, Richard, are you reporting to? Obviously, you have to report to B Corp because you've got the accreditation, but are there any not industry agnostic? Are there any broad international frameworks that you now report against?
So the main one is we use the basic online accountancy packages that everybody else does without promoting somebody's. That's where we get most of our data. We have then our own online processing, and that's where we've got the deep dive data. That's where we've got most of our data held. But it is, as you said, the B Corp is looking for evidence. The King's Award is looking for evidence. I'm now working with the Broadway Initiative, and they're doing a case study, and they've come back and said, Richard, we need evidence. And you're absolutely correct, Adrian, it's not good enough for somebody to say, we checked the boxes. Well, prove it that you've checked the boxes. Where's your evidence based? And this is where we've got chain of custody, which is with the FSC, which is the wood. They've got the person who's chopped the tree down, to who's done the timber, to who's done the next one, and there's the evidence all the way through. And this is why we're going to fit in, of every single business is one way or another. You will be connected to a big business who you buy from or who you sell to, and you will become part of that chain of custody. And that custody is the double materiality. And that chain of custody says, we're not accepting a photograph of, we want the actual bank. The worst one was this 3 miles. B Corp. I want the surnames and I want the postcodes. They checked online everybody's address to make sure that I wasn't just pulling a poker. And that is how much evidence they're looking for to have the full proof. And that's where a lot of businesses are going, oh, I'll just wing it. Yeah, I dropped them a tenner. No, we don't do cash. That's another policy of Crystal Doors. We will not buy from cash and we will not sell with cash because it's not evidence-based. We're trying to do the opposite. The digital world is easy. We can delete something and make it appear again. And blockchain will start growing very rapidly to stop this deep fake that's coming through from AI, which is pattern matching. And that is the future. Is if, Richard, you say that's who you are, I want to see your credentials. I want to see a passport of what your product is, which is the life cycle and the embedded carbon. As a person, I want to see your passport of what evidence you've achieved, which is why the skills and the qualifications are starting to come through. And as your service, I want to see the passport of how are you differentiating yourself to be better. And that's the reason why the companies that don't want to evidence, we have to now assume that they're not doing the right thing. Because only those that are now evidencing are going to be going forwards in this business world from 2030, 2035 onwards.
Okay, so I don't have a feel at the moment. We were going to do a quick poll to see, A, who are members, of course, and B, where are you? But thank you, Richard. I mean, we've got a really clear view there of your business and your passion and how you've gone about it. We've covered quite a lot of ground here. Right, so if you can see the polls coming up, guys, if you'd be kind enough to just give us an indication. There's 2 questions you're going to be asked about. One is, are you an IoD member or not? And secondly, the other question will be around, where you are on the sustainability journey. But to bring things to a sort of an end, and please do any more questions, very happy to hear them. We've looked at motive, the commitment, and whatever reason, morality case or business case, whatever, do make that commitment if you haven't already, and do have a look at things like the Good Business Charter, which are very low-hanging fruit. You can sign up and it's a great signal of intent inwards inside your company as well as outwards to your customers and to the world. And it's low-hanging fruit in the sense of low management time and low cost. Mapping, the gap analysis, B Corp, impact assessment. And each of these points, by the way, we will deep dive into as a sustainability group. Materiality, we've talked about making, what are the biggest impacts? Don't go chasing the tail here. What are the ones that really matter and will change the costs or the impacts and make a difference? What means and methods, methodology, there are lots, and John has been very kindly put up details about ISO 44000, which is about collaboration. UN SDG number 17, partnerships. We are in this together, and we have seen under COVID a lot more collaboration amongst a lot more businesses, and that has to continue in this space of sustainability and businesses working together, if only in the supply chain. But I would also say within your community, look after, take care of the community that you recruit from, that you sell into, that you base your operation on. Because if it doesn't, if there's civil war around you, that's not particularly good for sustainable business. Management, leadership and culture. Richard's talked about the vision. He's talked about he led by example. He's talked about employee voice and engagement and going to quite an extreme with that in terms of passing on his business to his employees, that they're engaged and empowered. The metrics, the more we can measure something and understand it, we will know if we're, cost benefit firstly. Secondly, we will be able to, we helped 25 grannies cross the road. So what? What changed? Well, 5 less deaths, 15 less hospitalizations. All of a sudden, it's not about inputs, it's about outputs and outcomes. What changed? What difference did it make to your business, or what difference did it make to society and community? And there is a methodology out there, but that's quite, that's probably we're moving from O level to advanced level, but we will cover those issues as part of the sustainability group in the future. And monitoring and reporting, yes, against the UN SDGs, Global Reporting Initiative, SASB, the Sustainability Accounting Standards Boards. And believe you me, I have the privilege of studying a lot of these things. They are changing very quickly. The landscape is changing. It's a tsunami going to hit business. And, if you're not sure about the business case, Is it carrot or stick, as Richard said? You know, I want to do it for the right reasons because I want to do good. I want to do it for business efficiency. I want to do it because the law is going to bite me in the backside if I don't. Believe you me, there's a tsunami going to hit business. Don't please be on the wrong side of history here, because all of a sudden when the law changes, and believe, you know, there is a Better Business Act campaign wants to change section 172 of the Companies Act, which will make it obligatory to take into account people, planet, and profit and report on it. And that is a cross-party initiative. It's been 3 years in the making. They've got over 3,000 companies. Take a look at it. Google Better Business Act campaign, sign up to it. But you can see the direction of travel. So if anyone has any doubts about the business case, I think the evidence, if you look, is all around. And hopefully today, we've extended people's understanding and awareness of these issues. And once you're sensitized to it, I think you'll see clues and help and support all around. And that's what this sustainability group is going to try to do. Right, last questions here. A couple of comments. Yadu, so thank you, John, very active. Francesca, modern slavery. Yes, of course, that's one of the, I put there ISO 26000. You know, BSI 8950 is about enhancing social value. There's a purpose standard on its way. Stephen, educate. Yes, educate, inform, because I think we're still at the awareness raising. Actually, we've got to get that AIDA model, right? Awareness, interest, desire, action. And that is what we and the IoD are promoting. Americans talk about industry ecosystems, for which read community. Yes, absolutely. Ecosystem in the supply chain, I think, and ecosystem within the community. We're all in it together. The public, private, third or not-for-profit charity sector, as well, of course, as academia. And looking inwards in the mirror, we in academia have a lot to do here. I think we can play our part. Okay, wow, we covered a lot of ground. It's a taster, I think, for what we will deep dive into in the future. I have to say, let's have a look. Have we got the results of the polls, Francis or Heather? Did we get any responses to the polls? Can you show any of the results or not? Right, are you an ID member? So mostly yes. Okay, very good. And if you're not, well, please take a close look and join the club here. And the second question was, where do you consider yourself to be on the journey, if you are? Right, very interesting. So we are talking to the converted in many ways, mostly the 3s and 4s. Excellent, very good. So you are advocates. We will be calling upon you to help and support us spread the word here. We're evangelists, but nice evangelists in the way we're going to go about it. So very good. All that remains then is to thank Richard for that fascinating insight into his journey. And I think one thing I took note, you started in 2015. It was really 2021, 2022 that you began to see the fruits of your great labor. So, wow, that's quite a significant time of laying the foundations. Many thanks to colleagues at the IoD. That's Francis and Heather for their support in setting this up and giving us the infrastructure and the space. Thanks to the rest of the committee, to Michelle Augusti, to Kirsty Maxey, to Donald Mavundase, and that's 3, Richard, of course, and hopefully you'll be hearing and seeing a lot more from us as our plans emerge. And then finally, a big thank you to all of you for joining us. I still have no idea how many people actually signed up, but let's keep that a secret. I'll have a look afterwards. And if my committee members could stay on, please, after the end of this session. But yeah, many thanks indeed. This is important. The world needs it, and I know we all face short-term pressures, and I haven't got the bandwidth. But you know, the longest journey starts with the first step, and as most of you are already on that journey, let's continue to bang the drum and help and support and work and collaborate together as UN SDG, the principles of partnership. So many thanks indeed. You'll be hearing from us very soon, but have a great weekend. Enjoy the weather. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Adrian.
Great. Thank you. Some nice comments at the end. Excellent. Good. Wow. Very good. Excellent indeed. So if the committee can stay on just a little bit longer, please, and we'll just have a quick catch up ready for our meeting next week. Heather and Francis as well. And I can now stop sharing probably. That's be a good idea, wouldn't it? There we go. That's me with my yellow summer t-shirt on for the fine weather we've got.
Let me just stop the recording.